Welcome to fasboyRambles by Fastboy Creative. As you probably guessed, I'm Fastboy, and today I'm going to ramble on learning to make money. So keep in mind, I'm just a regular guy. I think I've probably done okay for myself, and I'm going to ramble on my opinion of things you need to know to figure out how to earn the kind of money you're after earning. You can take a look at earlier episodes of the series if you're interested in learning more about having success and building wealth. Anyway, let's get right down to it here. So there's really just a couple different ways that you can make money, and they're either going to be active methods or passive methods. So on the active side of things, it's work a job or create some kind of side hustle, things like that, where you put in effort and make some money. And then on the passive side, it's where you invest and you use money you have or assets you have to make money in the background. Now, a couple of topics associated to those items is, if your goal is to make some good money or, larger amounts as compared to, say, your day job, you want to think about scalability and you want to think about diversification. So we're not going to talk a ton about those things because I want to try and keep this episode to 10 minutes like the others if I can. What you want to be thinking about is, are you trying to scale this into something bigger where you can really make big money? And are you concerned about what happens if the one thing that's working for you goes away? Do you need to consider diversification in the different ways you make your money? It's always good to be diversified across several different areas. Anyway, we're not going to talk any more about those items today. But let's talk about the three things that I do want to cover here. One is your day job. Secondly is your extracurricular. And then thirdly is your passive income. And then we'll try and wrap it up from there. Okay, so day job. Things I have to say about that is most people will have a day job, especially if the thing that you're trying to do is to make money. And the things I have to say about your day job is, have one that fits your skill set. Be the best employee that you can be, right? Do the job to the fullest of your extent, even if this isn't the thing that really trips your trigger. There's no reason to not be a good employee, in my opinion, right? Understand and exceed the expectations on all accounts is my opinion. So if whatever your job is, understand the role, make sure that you're at a minimum meeting the minimum requirements of what is expected for you. But I like to believe that if you exceed those by some extent, always that will move you right to the top of the crop. So get to work early, don't leave work early, don't take extended breaks. Understand what work is expected of you and make sure that you perform that work to satisfaction of your supervisor or whoever the people are that make judgments about that sort of thing, and enjoy your work. And if you don't, it's up to you to move on and get out of it. Not up to them to get rid of you because you're not doing a good job, right? Now, my opinion is if you do those things, you have that job, you do the best you can do at that job, you understand what the expectations are, you meet or exceed those expectations, and you will see advancement. And that advancement will come in the form of potentially pay and potentially the position that you hold within the company that you work for. So that's probably the best you can do with your day job, right? Is just be a good employee, do what's expected of you, meet the requirements of the position, and the company will likely do the best for you that they can. And that can be extra time off, it can be extra pay, it can be the new position, whatever. All right. Let's move on to item 2, which I like to call extracurricular, and people refer to this in different ways. So if you're watching this episode of learning about how to make money, you probably have considered a lot of these things already, and a lot of people will refer to this as the side gig or the side hustle. I don't like to say that because it always sounds like there's monkey business going on there or something shifty's happening if you call it a hustle. I like to talk about the extracurricular. What are the things that you can do to make money in addition to your day job? So you'll have to decide for yourself how much time you have available to put into this. But these making money in an extracurricular fashion usually requires some time outside of your normal day job, so you should plan for that. And the kind of things we're talking about are services, making things, and maybe flipping items or making a gain on an item. Now I'm going to talk about these in a little bit more detail. And again, I'm kind of cruising through this at a pretty good rate because there's a lot to talk about on this topic. But with respect to services, that's sort of the freelance approach. What is the thing that you know how to do that people would be happy to pay you for? And that can be anything from cutting lawn to writing resumes, painting houses, whatever it is, the thing that you know how to do that people are willing to pay for. So the advantage to that is you don't have to have really any money, and you can make some money. You're probably not going to make a ton of money. It's probably not a thing that's really very scalable, unless you're going to like employ others to provide services as well. But that should be said. All right, so then continuing to move on here, making things is another way you can make money. You know, if you know how to make things that you can sell to people, you can take your free time and make those things and make them available to those buyers. And there's many, many ways to do that. You know, you can use an auction site like eBay, or you can use a store like Etsy. You can have a sign out in front of your house, you know, Facebook Marketplace, all those sort of things. And, you know, so making things can take a little bit of money. You may have to come up with some materials and money in order to purchase the materials to make the things that you want to make. But when I think about making things, there's, you know, I build it, I sell it, and I make a profit on it. Okay, great. That's great. So from a scalability standpoint, as many things as I can make, presumably I can sell, and I can make money on each of those things. Well, consider this. Is there a possibility that you can make it once and then sell it many times? So that may make perfect sense to you, or it may not. But what I'm talking about is, say, for example, you write a book. Okay, you can write that book one time, but you can sell it as many times as you have buyers. You can, you know, record a song, or write a song, or take a picture, or, you know, make templates that use Microsoft Excel, or whatever the case might be. And you can make those things one time. And if you can, each time you can sell them, you can make money on it again. So that's a little bit more scalable in that respect. So if you know how to make things that you can sell over and over and over, that's a little bit better way to make money. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the item 3, which was the passive income discussion. But before we move on to that, the last thing I'll talk about is flipping items. So this is where you go buy something, and then you turn around and you sell it for more money. And most of the time you have to add some value to it and be able to do that, but not always. Sometimes if you're a really good, really smart buyer, and you're able to find things either online or digging through people's closets, you know, if you're helping them clean out their basements or whatever, sometimes you can find things you can sell, or people will ask you, you know, just to haul things away for them, and then in turn you can, you know, clean them up and sell them or whatever. So that's more of a scenario as we get into the, you know, passive money making thing. I'll talk about that a little bit on the capital gain side of things. So really what you're doing is taking something that exists and you're selling it, and then you're making a gain on that. So in the small sense, we call that, you know, flipping things. That might be as simple as, you know, go to a rummage sale and buy something that's maybe broken or needs to be painted or whatever, and you clean it up and do the thing that makes it more valuable, and you sell it. Okay, now let's move on to the third item we talked about, which was passive income. Now, really, I guess we're talking about using assets, where we're saying let's use money we have to make more money with it. So this is a little bit tougher to jump right into, because you either have to have some assets or you have to have some money. So likely you've used your day job, or you've used your extracurricular activity to generate the funds or the assets that you need to get into the passive side of things. So this could be things like, you know, real estates, buying stocks and bonds. It could even be putting money into your 401k. It could be selling existing assets that you have. It could be on the intellectual property side of things you've developed, you know, whether it's a digital asset or otherwise, ideas and concepts and things like that you can sell. And then, of course, renting things that are not real estate. So if you have, you know, a few cars and you're not driving them all the time, and you want to use an app like Turo or some other thing to make money off of those things when you're not using it. Maybe you have, you know, DJ equipment or things like that you could rent out during the times that you're not using it. So again, that's a passive income. You can make that money over and over and over again. So we talk about real estate for a minute. If you have extra money that you can invest in that way, or maybe even when you buy your first house, you buy a duplex or a fourplex or some other thing, so you can rent out the units that you're not living in. But rental is a good way to do it. You know, you might be able to buy a condo in a vacation region or things like that you're able to rent out and get paid for it each time people use it. Or you may be able to fix that up and flip it and make a capital gain on it. Or you might just buy it, use it for your own purposes, and sell it down the road as inflation happens and sell it for more money. Again, that's a capital gain. So it's a way that you can make money with an asset that you have without really doing much work. Now on what people think of as the traditional investment side of things, you know, it's like buying stocks, buying bonds, putting your money in a high yield savings account, buying mutual funds, things like that, or possibly putting earned money through your job into 401k. Those are things where you put money into a defined vehicle, that's there for you to make money based on the money that you've put in. So again, it's you're not really doing anything. Your money's just sitting there and it's getting used, and you're getting payback for it. And you're probably not earning a ton of cash here. You really got to make that money over time, or you need to have a big sum that you put in to get the money back on. So you may not be till down the road that you have larger sums of monies that you can do that with. The next thing is a little bit easier, selling of existing assets. So if you've collected up things that you don't care about anymore or have become worth more money to you in cash than they are to you in sentimental value, then you can sell those things. So maybe you have a baseball card collection from when you were a kid, or maybe you've collected dolls and some of them have become worth money, Beanie Babies, things like that go up in value. And it could be cars, motorcycles, all sorts of different artwork, all sorts of different things. But you may be able to, turn those assets into cash so that you can do something else with the cash that's more meaningful to you for the point that you're at in your life. Now, the next one, digital assets. That's one of my favorites, right? Because most people nowadays, especially kids growing up, know how to use the digital regime pretty well. You know how to use all the different software and whatnot to create things that people will buy. So again, it's all sorts of things. You can write a piece of software that does some specific thing that other people who don't know how to write software can benefit from. Great way, sell that software. Every copy of that software that you sell, you wrote it once, you make money over and over and over again. You can sell, one copy a month. That's 12 times in a year you can get paid for that software that you developed just one time. And if it's a really good piece of software, or even better yet, an app for a phone, or like an iPhone or an Android, whatever it is, those things can, if it's something that applies to the masses, you can make a lot of money on it. I get this, not easy to get into those things and do them. It takes some research and whatnot, but the idea is good. And that includes, digital assets include things like photographs you've taken, or maybe music you've composed, forms you've written using software tools. I see people online doing things like coloring book pages and for sale signs and all sorts of crazy things. And so, some avenues for that might be, Etsy and Printify and even eBay and places like that, where it's pretty easy for you to put together a group of assets, whatever they are, and try and sell those and make a little bit of money on that. If you hit on something good and get a lot of people to buy it, you can really make some good money at it. It does take persistence, and we'll talk about that in some future episodes as we have a more serious conversation about being persistent in what you do to make your money. And then this last item I'll talk about just a little bit yet, probably not one most people are going to do, but renting non-real estate type assets. So if you have an extra car that you don't use all the time, you live in a region where an app like Turo is to advantage to you, that you rent that car out. And especially if you have any kind of, more desirable cars, if you have an old collectible car of sorts, people will rent those to do wedding shoots or take pictures with, or just use them for a drive for the day. And if you have some old collectible Porsche, even like a 944 or something like that, that's not hugely valuable, that's a lot of people's dream cars. They may rent it for the afternoon, and they may be willing to pay $300 or $400 to rent it for the afternoon. So those are options for things like that. But I think I'm going to wrap it up here so that the rambling doesn't really turn into serious rambling here. But just to recap, we talked about if you're wanting to make money, make sure that you set out to look at all aspects, all ways that you can improve your situation. And I'll talk about that a lot. Like, what did you do today to improve your situation? Okay, well, on the making money side of things, there's always things you can do to improve your situation. Be the best day job holder you can be, so you're the one that gets the raise and the extra days off and the bonuses and the things like that. Okay, focus on how you can make money from an extracurricular standpoint. There's all kinds of things you can do. Freelance is a great way to get started if you haven't got any cash. Selling things you already have, or flipping items from rummage sales, great ways to do it. Providing services to people, like if you got the DJ equipment, you could go out and you could be the DJ, or you could rent the equipment. Then on the passive side, we're probably talking more about, when you've got some money, it's like, what are the things I can buy that I can use to make money with? And real estate's always a good one. And we talked about stocks and bonds and things like that. These days, there's so many ways to get into those kind of investments with online trading and apps like Acorn that takes a little bit of your money each time and invests it for you every time you use your credit card. There's just all sorts of ways to do that. And maybe we'll talk about some of those in more detail in the future. But in this passive investment one, the one I like, if you haven't got a lot of money, is digital assets, right? Develop some digital assets. That's free for you to do. All it takes is your time. Develop it. If nobody buys it, you learn something, and all you're out is the time that you spent. And if people do buy it, you can just keep on selling it, and make more money doing it. But I think we're going to maybe wrap at that point And this is fasboyRambles signing off for this episode. Thanks.